We've kind of come full circle with the college football playoff eliminator. When we first started this at the beginning of the season, we didn't have many teams to eliminate. There wasn't a lot to talk about in terms of elimination. And now that we've gotten to the end of the season, there's not really a whole lot to talk about in terms of teams still alive because we pretty much know who's going to be in the playoff. But there are a few games that will determine how it's going to finish up in terms of the rankings, and then the committee will determine tonight really who gets that last spot if there is a spot available. So let's jump into it here. We've got new eliminations this week, and these are the final. This is the final elimination video, the final playoff eliminator video, because the rankings will be out on Sunday. So again, this is the last chance. We will know who's eliminated when those rankings come out, so there's no point in doing a video. But we've got Army, BYU, Colorado, Ole Miss, Texas A&M, and Tulane. So you look at Army and Tulane in the American. With Tulane losing, there's not going to be any argument for the American champion to be ranked ahead of the Mountain West champion. So they're out. The American Conference now out of it, and that will come down. That group of 5 spot will come down to Boise State and UNLV. We've got BYU and Colorado out of the Big 12. They didn't make it to the Big 12 championship. They're not ranked high enough. They're out of it. Ole Miss, again, no path for them. Texas A&M, they can't win the SEC now, so there's no path for them. And these teams, again, are the new eliminations this week. So let's look at the playoff picture now, and this might be kind of a short video, but really only 3 categories. And we'll start with the teams that are locked in. Tennessee, Ohio State, Texas, Notre Dame, Georgia, Penn State, Indiana, and Oregon. So these teams are locked in. We know that they will be in the college football playoff. We also know that there will be a spot taken by the ACC, the Big 12, and the Mountain West. So then there's going to be that one final spot. But I don't see any way that these teams would not all make it in. You look at Indiana. What if SMU wins the ACC? What if Iowa State? I'm thinking about Arizona State possibly winning the Big 12 and jumping ahead of some teams. But still, Indiana would be in. There's just, I don't really see any path for Indiana to not get in. They were ranked high enough last week. They took care of business, so they're in. Ohio State's not going to drop that much. I showed you where I think they're going to be ranked in the video yesterday. You look at the conference championship games. Texas, Georgia, they're ranked high enough. Losers not going to fall. And the committee pretty much said they're not going to penalize teams for losing in conference championship games, at least not much. I do wonder about SMU, and so I don't have SMU on the screen. I believe SMU is probably locked in, but if they get blown out by Clemson, which is unlikely, but if let's say they did, you could see them dropping out because they're a little bit closer to the bottom of those rankings. But I think SMU's locked in, but I can't say that with 100% certainty. So I'm going to say, I'm 95% sure SMU's locked in, but that's why they're not on this screen. But yeah, you look at all these different matchups: Penn State, Oregon, winner of that game's in, loser of that game is in, and it's just going to come down to seeding. It's going to come down to those first round buys. But these teams are locked in, so we know 8 of the teams. Now let's look at the teams that are in control. So if they win their conference championship games, they'll be in. You've got Arizona State and Iowa State. Winner will be in, loser will be out. SMU, Clemson. If SMU wins, they're in. Clemson loses, they're out. If Clemson wins, obviously they're in. I think, again, SMU will still be in. I really feel like the committee will. Look, this is a one-loss Power 4 team in the regular season that lost to a top 25 BYU team. So I don't see SMU being left out. It would surprise me. So then you got Boise State and UNLV. The winner of that game will be in. Is there any, and I mentioned this I think yesterday, is there any chance that UNLV wins a close game and it goes to 5 overtimes or something like that, and UNLV wins? Is there any chance Boise State stays in the top, ranked high enough to where they could get in? I think that's possible, but very unlikely. They just don't really have, UNLV's their only quality win when you look at their resume. I know they played Oregon close, and I think that's really the reason why they're ranked where they are and have been all year. I feel like they would drop, though, a little bit, just enough to allow maybe an Alabama or a Miami or a South Carolina to get in. That'll be interesting. But if Boise State wins, obviously they're in, UNLV's out. If UNLV wins, then maybe there is a discussion there, which, again, could be very interesting. We'll see how that plays out. All right, so the teams that need some help: Alabama, Miami, and South Carolina. So these teams all need help. First of all, they don't need Clemson to win the ACC championship, because if Clemson wins that game, then I don't see a path for any of these teams unless they were able to jump ahead of SMU. Now, that's the only way they get in. So if Clemson wins the ACC, these teams are out. There's no room for them. They will not get in. Again, I do not see SMU dropping below these teams. I guess it's possible if this committee wants to throw a big brand in there, and we've seen the brand bias with these rankings so far. I don't think they'll be able to justify that, though. So I believe that Clemson beating SMU would eliminate these three teams. All right, so let's say SMU wins and Clemson does not get in. Who gets in out of these three teams? Well, they need help. Who do they need help from? They need help from the playoff committee, because it's going to come down to where the playoff committee ranks these teams. Alabama has a great case. They've got really good wins. Miami's only got 2 losses. South Carolina, they've got 3 losses, but they're to good teams. There's an argument for all 3 teams. I don't know what's going to happen. I predicted Miami to be ranked ahead of Alabama, but I could honestly see any of these, because South Carolina got a big one over Clemson. Do they make that big jump? I could see that happening. I just don't know what this committee is thinking when it comes to these 3 teams, so I really don't know. We will know, though, when the rankings come out tonight. 2 of these teams will be eliminated. Whoever is ranked behind the other, or whichever 2 teams are ranked behind the one team here, those teams are out. They're eliminated. So, yeah, we could actually have waited and done this video tomorrow and made 2 more eliminations, because 2 of these teams will be eliminated. I will say this, and I meant to bring this up in the video yesterday on my rankings projection. Clemson, just something to keep in mind here. Clemson had 2 losses, and they were ranked ahead of Alabama, Ole Miss, South Carolina, because they only had 2 losses. Their resume is not very good. It's not good at all. In fact, I would argue that Miami probably has better wins than Clemson. You look at Clemson's best win, it's Pitt. That's a 5-loss team. That's Clemson's best win. And again, remember, Clemson was ranked ahead of a 3-loss Alabama last week. A 2-loss Clemson ranked ahead of a 3-loss Alabama. Miami, on the other hand, they've got a win over a 3-loss Duke, a 4-loss Louisville, and a 5-loss Florida. They've got much better wins than Clemson. Now, you could argue their losses maybe are worse. Again, I think Syracuse, they're going to be ranked this week, and then I don't think Georgia Tech's a bad team. So, Clemson getting blown out by Louisville, that's worse than those 2 losses from Miami. So there is absolutely, in my opinion, you can justify putting Miami ahead of Alabama if they had, again, whatever reasoning they had Clemson ahead of Alabama, they could use that same reasoning for Miami. Again, Miami has better wins than Clemson. So I really do, the more I look at things like that, I really do believe that Miami is going to be that team to get in. I think one thing that could hurt them is how the teams are playing down the stretch, because the committee has seemed to look at that and not look at the entire season, but how teams are playing now. I think it's impossible not to look at that when you're watching these games and trying to evaluate these teams. So that's going to be it. That's going to be the interesting thing to watch tonight. Alabama, Miami, South Carolina, 2 of these teams will be eliminated. The winner just has to hope for an SMU win. If that happens, they'll be in the college football playoff. And again, that will be clear after we see those rankings tonight. So that's the updated playoff picture. Again, some new eliminations this week. A couple more eliminations coming up after the rankings are revealed tonight. We'd love to get your thoughts. And again, sound off on the debate. Alabama, Miami, South Carolina. Who do you think gets in out of those 3 teams? And tell me why.